Today, I'm very happy to introduce key leaders in the Polkadot ecosystem. I will first introduce Jay, director at the CUS, is the main media producer in the Polkadot ecosystem. Hello, Jay. And Ben, ecosystem lead at Hydration Network, the main DeFi protocol in the ecosystem. And of course, Mark, Chief Investment Officer at Scytl. I don't need to introduce him, but of course, Scytl is a dedicated fund in the Polkadot ecosystem. Cool. Yeah, guys. All right. Okay, Jay.
Hello.
You are the narrator of governance. You started many initiatives, attempt at governance. You recently have the CUS DAO. And I'm very curious to see your view. How is the story of Polkadot governance evolved from centralized bottlenecks to participatory chaos and the current moment?
Well, I think one of the big challenges with decentralized governance is the flow of information. And the theory is, as long as humans are in control of the machines, we need a way to communicate and make sure we get as close to the truth as possible with storytelling. So what we're doing at the CUS is providing platforms for people to come up and share their ideas. We have this live governance show, AAG,
right.
Attempts at Governance.
Yes.
Podcasts. We have a platform for journalists. And we have this internal DAO voting system, a forum where everybody can speak. So the evolution has really been from a small group of counselors, just, what was it, 13 or 19 people, sharing information amongst themselves. You'd appeal to a small council, beg them, please, to pass your proposal, to this wide distribution of information, and recently across multiple languages. So there's a higher velocity of information. There's more to keep track of. And the goal with the work that we do is to provide common places where people can get as much information as possible, make their own decisions, and contribute to the decision.
Nice. How do you keep track of all the things?
I don't. All I do is maintain the platforms, and I leave it to everybody else to figure out what to do.
Another question for you is should storytelling be a formal part of governance? I think this is already something that you already answered, maybe yes. And can this improve engagement of people and maybe legitimacy?
What was the first part that you said there?
If storytelling...
Storytelling.
Yes, storytelling, the fact that you are narrating and doing all these initiatives,
yeah.
Is this helping people to boost engagement?
Well, a big disadvantage the humans have against the machines is that we don't really communicate in raw data, raw facts. We have to tell stories, which is like a compression of the truth. Every story we tell is missing most of the elements that made up the facts surrounding this narrative. So stories are necessary. The idea is to get as many stories as possible and to have them collide in a common place. So from there, we can get a sort of consensus that we can understand as humans to make the right decisions.
Right. Cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think this is the time for Ben. Ben is the experimenter of governance. And of course, Hydration Network is the largest DeFi protocol in the Polkadot ecosystem. They recently boost TVL of 3 times up to 160 million. They're really gaining traction in the ecosystem. And I think one of the cool things of this protocol is that they implemented a governance model that is kind of a gamified one with staking. And yeah, maybe Ben, you can explain briefly how this gamified staking system works with governance. And especially I'm interested if this can maybe be implemented on Polkadot to boost participation.
Sure. So I'll keep it as brief as I can. So staking on a parachain is kind of pointless in some instances because we get security from the relay chain from Polkadot. So we always had these requests for can we implement staking, but initially it was, why? What's the benefit of doing this? Then we realized that actually, if we can tie it into governance, which is the single biggest threat vector for a parachain, then actually we can ensure that the parachain is protected, whilst actually getting some use out of this staking. So essentially, what we do is we have staking without any locks on the base layer, and then when you lock your tokens in governance voting, which you select your level of lock based on how convicted you are, those locks that you do apply a multiplier to the speed at which your rewards unlock. So the more you vote and with higher conviction, the faster your rewards unlock. So it's not giving any extra rewards to those people who are participating, but it's giving them a route in which to access those faster. Now, whether that could be used for Polkadot is something I've pondered previously. You'd need to make sure that it's not something you're given something additional for. You don't want people voting just for the sake of voting. But it could be useful to spur people on to involving, because when you've got low participation rates, right?
Right.
So on hydration, we recently had a proposal that got 25% participation.
That's amazing. It's
Like,
a lot.
Yeah. It was a quarter of the network tokens participated in this vote. So it definitely works in terms of engaging voters.
Jay?
We've seen problems before with incentivizing voting, right? Because as you kind of mentioned there, we don't want people just voting for the sake of getting rewards, because that really leads to shallow voting, people just kind of following the crowd, which can lead to worse results. We saw this in Polkadot or on Kusama. Pretty early, people were getting incentivized with NFT collections, and then we saw way more participation, but the trade-off was worse results. Somehow you guys have seemed to cracked it though.
Yeah, I think being a smaller, more niche network helps, because you generally tend to have diehards involved, versus something that's much more liquid like Polkadot. But also, I think the fact that you're gamifying the conviction through the length of time that you're locked up means you generally have to be more serious and contemplate what you're doing, because you don't want to lock yourself for 200 odd days if you're voting for something really silly, right?
Yeah.
And do you think the quality of voting can be compromised when there's this kind of gamification, like people just voting whatever just because they want to maybe unlock their rewards faster?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm under no illusions that people probably see me vote aye on something and just immediately follow, right? But there are a lot of people who do care and do get involved. So when you have 25% of the network tokens voting, even if only 5% of those are actually good votes, then you are getting, 5% is still a massive turnout if you compare it to, for example, the standard Polkadot governance vote, which again is still a lot higher than any external ecosystem. So I think, there will be a lot of participation that perhaps isn't super useful, but as long as you do have some useful participation, then that's better than obviously overall not.
Right. Cool. Yeah, thanks a lot. It's the time of Mark. Mark is the capital allocator in this panel. And Cital is the first important Polkadot ecosystem fund. And I'm quite interested to know for you how the investment world look at Polkadot governance. And do venture capital prefer project with predictable governance, maybe more centralized? And what are the trade-off that you faced in these 4, maybe 5, maybe more years doing this?
Well, I think the effectiveness of whatever governance can be judged by the quality of the decisions and the results that come out of it. But how you get there is important. So for those that don't know, Polkadot has a revolutionary, one-of-a-kind, open governance where anybody can propose something and token holders vote on it, and whatever is decided is executed all on chain. So everything happens and I don't know anywhere else that does it. And we can leave it open for discussion. Sorry, my kids are here. The reason that they're here is my daughter had birthday yesterday. So I could be here. I never missed a birthday. And so we could have celebrated our birthday at home, or they came here for it. So I'm really grateful to have them here. And so that's why. And so my wife is awesome, and she organized everything. That's cool. So, but back to governance. So, speaking of governance, exactly. and so you asked if a predictable system is better for investors.
Yes.
And the answer is absolutely. And I think but that's only one of the reasons that there's less capital in the Polkadot ecosystem. I don't think that's the main one at all, but having like some sort of predictability, some direction, some story about where it's going and why it's going there is really important. And I think it's fair to have the conversation, has OpenGov been something that's helped or something that's hurt? And from a sort of design point of view, to really get to Web3, you need something like OpenGov. But what should OpenGov look like? Should it look the way it is now, or will it evolve and improve over time into something that is maybe more directed and more effective in its decisions? And I think that's the direction that it will go, but it won't happen all by itself. And that's also the beautiful part of it, is that we can decide as an ecosystem how we think it's a good idea to improve something, and then we can vote on it. And then we can see, and it's in the financial interests of the token holders to have the best possible outcome.
Right. I think OpenGov already went through a big evolution since the start. We have seen when it was launched, nothing was passing. And then at a certain point, one whale started to vote yes on everything, and everything was passing. And the balance was going down, and people came together and started the new initiatives, new DAOs, delegations of vote, decentralized voices via the Web3 Foundation that is delegating voting powers in a rotational system in order to a little bit have control, not have control, but I think at the start you need some sort of steer a little bit the direction or level up a little bit the power when there is not too much participatory, not too much participation in the governance. What do you think? This is for everybody.
I think it's useful to look at the OpenGov and the entire governance experience, look at it through the lens of sort of like a human growing up. In the beginning, you had the parents, the strict parents, making most of the decisions for the child. But eventually, we kind of relinquished that centralized vision and that centralized decision-making to everybody. You kind of let the kid run around and do whatever they want. Now, what this looked like in the very beginning, when we tested it first on Kusama, was we spent like $11 million in 2 months. It's like the kid opened up the pantry and just ate whatever they wanted.
That's crazy.
And then we had some reckoning, some conservatism, right? But then again, the kid grows up, it gets a little bit more power, a little bit more boldness, and we had another huge spending period, which again was followed by a sort of conservative time. I think governance is maturing slowly, and maybe certain time horizons, you can't really depend on governance to make the right decisions over the short term, but over the long term, we're seeing governance mature. We're seeing sub-consensus systems being built. We're seeing payment organizations being built out. And this is all making for better decision-making, but it's slow. And we sacrifice that centralized control to have resilience long-term, but it needs to grow, and it is.
Yeah, because it's not only a technical challenge, right, to set up this governance structure from the blockchain technology perspective. I think it's like
a social
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think Polkadot might have an advantage just because started so early,
Yeah.
maybe others that will want to implement a governance in their own ecosystem will probably face similar challenges.
It's interesting to watch the other ecosystems attempt something like this, actually. It's interesting to watch the mistakes repeat. Almost seems like natural course.
Isn't Cardano going through the same thing right now?
Cardano just opened it up, and what's happening? Well, there are these proposals to have $100 million omnibus spending bills come through. This is the idea. They're not going to get through, or maybe some will, and we'll see how successful they are. But based on what we've learned, it's going to be tough going.
To Mark, still a question about. So I think you're generally optimistic around Web3 native governance, creating maybe investable structures, or being seen a little bit more positive in the future via this decentralization, or maybe you think like it will be a long time in the future because we're still awaiting some kind of maturity that investors are looking at, that we are not yet there.
Well, like I said, so the governance is an important factor for investors, but in the end, investors want to have a path to profitability. So how are they going to make money? And is governance going to be something that aids that, or is it going to be something that damages it? And also, like, what does it do for the credibility? So I got myself embroiled in a controversy. For those that know, I was at a blockchain event with a lot of OGs, and they were all laughing about Polkadot because of the way that the treasury was spending money. And it didn't seem like it was directed, didn't seem like there was a purpose, and it didn't seem like it was because probably there definitely wasn't an overarching one, because it was all like sort of bottom up. But that hurt Polkadot's image because it's a competitive industry, resources are scarce, and if you're not using them effectively, then it's an actual negative. It's not just neutral, oh, we didn't spend something like great, but it doesn't hurt. It actually does hurt because you're not spending it on something good where others would be spending it on something good. But I think that as it's, this controversy happened and we went through it, and I think people know that most of the main participants really want the best outcome or the best processes going forward. And I think we're getting there. And I think one of the things we can look at is, how did humans organize themselves anyway? And so this is old, like saying that the best form of governance or government is a benevolent king, but then you don't know what the heir is going to do. And so maybe long term, that's not great. And we're not talking about kings or any sort of centralized decision making because there is so many stakeholders in the ecosystem. But each stakeholder is busy with whatever business that they're doing, and when governance is 24/7, nobody can keep up. And it's like, really, nobody can keep up, so then it's information overload. Don't pay attention until there's something to pay attention about, or don't care at all. And that is not a good outcome. So I think there's a lot of ways that, like, Polkadot governance can improve itself, and one of them could be, let's say, have in session and then not in session. Like, voting is in session. That's what like mature governments do all around the world now, and there's a reason that they do it that way. And maybe starting from scratch everything all over and reinventing the wheel maybe conceptually it's like the cool kid thing to do, but is not a realistic way to be very effective. And I think things will move in that direction to be effective, positively.
Are you delegating to the KUSDAO?
Come on, Mark.
Well, we vote ourselves in an informed way.
Yeah, no, I think like this is also a very important topic to discuss because I like the analogy that Jay Jay said about the young boy that needs to be like helped at the start and then maybe more free later. But do you really think we will come at a point that the governance will be fully decentralized? Because what I'm looking at now is like forming of different political parties, different DAOs, like in the real world, right? So these DAOs have delegation, they have like voting power, so there will be like, and this is all public, right? This is all like under the eyes of everybody. And do you think this is, I mean, it's showing like how the real world works, but for many, they don't see this in the real world, and they are kind of stunned to see how things are going, but it's actually the reality. So this is like kind of like a problem for the token holders that maybe they don't accept, you know, what they see, but it's actually what happens all the time.
I think when we talk about decentralization as an ideal, it's important to realize that ultimate decentralization, kind of like what you suggested there, can we really get fully decentralized? That's not really an effective way to work. I think what we want is we want to have it so the system is built that at any point we can distribute responsibility among the widest group of people possible. But local centralization, global decentralization, is the ideal form. So we do have localized centralization, we do have localized authority and power build up. As long as it can collapse when it starts to become corrupted and failed back into a general decentralization, I think we still maintain that resilience we need to outlast any competition who's working just with global centralization. So you can have Scytale rise up as a strong power, you can have any DAO rise up as a strong power, but if they become...
At a certain point, there will be so many of them that is kind of a decentralized structure and above another decentralized...
Yeah, it's a bit fractal.
Yeah.
But as long as there's this sort of global decentralization always to collapse back to, I think we maintain that resilience.
Yeah. Cool. No, it's really insightful. Yeah, I think we are at the end. So yeah, I thank you all the panelists for this interesting talk about governance. And yeah, the challenge I think isn't just removing power. I think it's also reshaping it and making it a collective effort. So yeah, we will see like how Polkadot actually will evolve from here. I think there is a big evolution so far, and yeah, really excited about what's come. Thank you.